Hello, looks like we are finally live. I apologize for the delay. For some reason, YouTube Live just would not connect this morning. So I apologize, but here we are. Today, what I want to do is go over how to customize a hoodie pattern for a dog. Now, there's lots of people that have been asking me to talk about how to fit a custom fit a coat for a dog that is actually covering the chest area. The thing about what I've been talking about for the most part now, up till now, has been about the cozy coat, which is a great place to start if you're just learning how to make dog wear. But if you're a bit more advanced or you want to take on a bit more of a challenge, then a coat that covers the chest is definitely got some more areas in it that you can customize, but also that you need to be aware of how to customize. So this is going to be a several part series because I don't want to overwhelm you all in one session. Today, what I want to talk about is how to customize the withers point. And again, if this is your first time with me, the withers point is the measurement between the collar and where the shoulders are on the dog. And you find the shoulders by just running an invisible line right up from behind the front legs on the dog. You run that right up, an invisible line right up to their spine, and you'll find that's where the shoulders are. That's what's just like our shoulders. That's what's moving their legs. So that's called the withers point. So the first measurement that I always, when I'm customizing a pattern, the first measurement that I always look at is that withers point. So, and this changes a lot on dogs and different dog breeds. And it's a really important factor to customize, because if it's too far back, then the coat's going to kind of bunch. I shouldn't be doing that because my new microphone, I just got a brand new microphone. I shouldn't be throwing my shirt around because I'm sure that's making great loud noises. Anyhow, if it's too far back, then the coat is going to slide back on the dog, and it's just going to be sliding around on them. Conversely, if it's too short, it's going to be way too far up on them, and it's going to be really tight underneath the arm section on the dogs. So this is one of the most crucial points to get right when you are first customizing a pattern. So I'm going to switch to my overhead camera here and just look at, first of all, what we're going to look at is the measurements chart. Actually, before we even do that, let's just back up a little bit, and I'm going to show you the actual hoodie pattern that I created. This is my hoodie pattern, and this is the back side of it. It's got a cute little pocket on it. I live in East Vancouver, I live in East Van. This is a label that I love to put onto my jackets for people that live in East Van as well. So you can have a little pocket here, and you can carry poop bags in there, or it may just be strictly decorative. This also has a cute little hood, and the hood is lined, and it's got a drawstring. And if I flip it over, it's got a zipper on the front, and that really makes it easy to pull it on over that dog's head, which is nice, especially if you have a dog that doesn't like things pulled over their head. That just makes it a little easier. So a couple of things to be aware of here. Let's look at the back side again. This opening, this is where I have an extra opening in order to hook up to the harness that is on the back of a dog often. This is completely optional. You don't need to put in a hole for the opening, but I like to do that. My dog, Scout, has an opening. She always wears a harness, so I like to hook up on the back. So this is something that you can add in if you like. This point right here is where the withers are on a dog, and that is where the harness typically sits, is right around the withers. So I often put a hole there, but this is also an indication for you just visually as to where that withers point is. Now, this jacket is much bigger than the pattern I'm going to show you, but I just wanted to show you that this is what I'm talking about, is this area in here. And what I'm going to just show you quickly how to do on the pattern is how you're going to adjust this. If you have a pattern that's, if your dog has a shorter withers, then you would cut it and you would make this section shorter. And conversely, if you had a dog with a longer withers, you would cut it and you would spread it open here. The thing that really, the crucial thing when you're looking at a pattern that has coverage on all areas is when you make a change to this, you also need to make a change to the sleeve, and you need to make a change to the front. And the reason for this is if you start changing the back side of it, then it's no longer going to meet up with, if I added extra space here and then tried to attach my arm, it would no longer meet up anymore. Like it wouldn't, the seams wouldn't be the same length. And the same thing, once I change the length on my arm, I'm then going to have to change the length on the front. So I'm just going to show you at the pattern level how I would go about doing that. So let's just pull out the first, what I started with earlier. This is the chart that I have for my patterns. And number 2 here is the withers length. And so for this, I'm looking at a small pattern I just printed out, and the withers length is 3.125. So that's 3 and, what is that? 3 3/8, I think. So I'm going to look at my pattern here, and this is the back. I'm going to start with the back. So you have this little dotted line that goes along here, that is the withers line. And if I measure that, it should, I'm going to measure right from the point here on this is the fold, and that's where the bottom half of where it goes around the neck circumference. This is the neck. I'm going to measure from there down to the withers point, and yeah, it's 3 1/8. Now let's say I was making this wouldn't fit my dog Scout, but let's say I was. And Scout actually has a much longer withers point than a lot of dogs, so I would add in some extra space here. But if I was making it for a really small little dog that had a much shorter withers, I would also make a change here, but I would decrease it. So let me just go show you about how I'm going to do that. So there is a cut line on here. Don't know if you can see that very well, but there's little scissors here, and that's my cut line. So I would cut here. Oops, I should get out my cutting board so I don't wreck my wood. All right, so I'm going to cut along that line. And then if I was going to make it a shorter withers, then I would simply measure how much shorter it wanted to be. So let's say it was going to be a 1/2 inch shorter. Then I would add a little mark there, and then I would take this down. I'd want to match up these lines because I want to make sure that my fold line is consistent. So I'd match up that line, and then I would glue it. And then the next thing I would need to do is even off. I would want to even off this section here so that these lines met up nicely. And the same thing here for my actual seam line. So that's what I would do if I was going to shorten the withers. But if I want to lengthen the withers, then I need to actually add an extra piece of paper in here in order to add that extra space. So I'm going to pretend that I'm adding an extra inch in for my pattern that I need to do. So I've already created a piece of paper here just to save some time. And what I did is I've measured off 1 inch in between, and then I gave myself a little bit of extra space on either side. I did 3/8 of an inch, but it doesn't really matter. You just need to leave yourself a little bit of extra space so that you can glue this on. So I'm going to, better to start on the flat side. And again, because you want to make sure that your fold is consistent. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to glue it, keeping that line consistent. Okay, so I'm just going to get a little scrap piece of paper here so that I can glue on it. And I'm just going to glue on this section here. Sorry, that's not right. Yeah, that is right. All right, now I'm confused. No, sorry, I just glued the wrong spot. I'm going to glue on these sections here, not on the pattern itself. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to glue a little bit of extra there. So then I'm going to match this line with that line. and make, whoopsie-daisy, and then make sure that this line is going along the line that I drew on my new piece of paper. So that is lined up. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other part that I cut off. I'm going to line it up along this line here, along the fold line, and then make sure that it continues along that line that I drew. I've let this go a little bit long, so I'm just going to add a little more glue. There we go. Okay, so now I have, I'm just going to even this off because I kind of I've been a bit of a perfectionist here, but there you go. Cut that off. And then I just want to do the same thing. I want to even this space out here so that it lines nicely between. Now, normally I would use a French curve, but just to save time, I'm going to just eyeball it. And I just want to make a nice transition between these two areas here. And then I'll do the same thing here. And again, normally I would measure this and make sure that I am doing this right, but for purposes of showing you on the camera, I'll just do that quickly. So then I'm going to just cut that off. So I have a nice even, so that's my new arm length. And as I said, when I do it to this side, this is the back side, I need to consistently do that to the sleeve and to the front as well. So let's take a look at the sleeve. This is the sleeve here. And as you can see, it's got A. This is going to attach to A, to back. And if I look at the back portion here, there is A there. So I need to make sure that this length here is the same as this length. So the first thing I need to do is cut that same spot where that cut line is on the pattern. So again, you're going to look for that little scissors mark and you cut along that dotted line to open it up. And if I was going to make it shorter, I'd do the same thing. I'd shorten it down and I'd even that line off on both sides. But in my case, as we've already done, I'm going to make this one longer. Now that piece is not going to work for me, but this one will. So I've got an extra piece that I already prepared. And this one, because I don't have a fold line, doesn't matter as much about lining it up. But I am just going to eyeball it first. So I put the bottom one onto that, matching along with my line, and the top one, and just make sure that I have the same amount of space, enough space to continue on both sides. That's all I was doing there. So you're also going to eyeball this a bit. So because I have, probably the best thing to do now that I'm thinking on camera is you're going to take that dotted line. Now this dotted line tells me where I'm going to split. And I'm going to go into this whole idea of customizing this hoodie pattern over many, many different live sessions. But what I want to talk about today is just this withers. But this line here is in place here to allow you to do some other customization. And I'm just going to do a mark there, which gives me the point where this is going to meet up. And then I'm going to just continue that line straight up, so that I know where I want to place this. And that will make sure that these are fairly even on either side when I'm continuing this line up. So let's do the same thing. I'm gonna get my scrap piece of paper and add some glue on both sides. And then glue this guy together. So again, I'm gonna match that line up that I drew onto my pattern with the dotted line that I did onto my extra piece of paper. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line that line that I created up with the line on the top piece. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to eyeball today, but you would use a French curve or something that's rounded to give you an idea of how you want to even this line out. But I'm just going to eyeball it. So I'm going to try to line this line up with that line. Now, before I cut this and finalize this, I would actually do this in pencil because I may need to do some modifications. So this line here, as I mentioned, this says A to back, which is this section here. So I would take my French curve or some kind of a measuring thing to get an accurate sense of this. But just to be quick, I'm going to do it with my measuring tape. So this isn't going to be super accurate, but it gives you an idea. You want to measure from this point to that point along the curve. And I have 7.5. So if I take that over here and measure, I want to make sure that that curve is the same. So as you can see, 7.5, if I take my starting point and put it on that point there, and I take the 7.5 and put it on that point there, that gives me an idea of how I want to create that line. So you can see the original line that I drew is actually kind of off. It's off here. It's not going to give enough of a curve. And when I put these two together, they wouldn't line up anymore. So I'm going to just, again, I'm going to do this really quickly, but I can see if I do the 7.5 to that point and the 0 to that point, I can see that I need to do basically an adjustment around here to make it that right length. I think that's coming across on camera. Okay, so, and then I'll just do another line there. Okay, so that gives me an idea. Again, you would be doing this with a French curve or something a little bit more accurate, but this will give me that idea of how, just to get you through this this overhead example here, that's going to give me the right length so that it matches up with this length. So then I would add my seam allowance. So I'm going to continue this and just even that off so that it fits into the curve nicely. Hope I didn't block all that with my head. And then I'll cut that off. And the point that you just really want to make sure you do here, the key components to what I'm trying to say, is you want to make sure that you measure this and it matches up with this. You want to start and end at the exact same places of the pattern itself. You don't want to move this in or change where this ends. So you want to make sure that those parts are the same, but this measurement matches this measurement here. So that we have a pretty good idea of that. And then now we're going to work on the front side. So we'll put the sleeve aside and we'll take a look at the front portion of the pattern. So here's my front. And I'm going to do the same thing. This is my withers line here, and I'm going to cut straight across that withers line to start. And then I'm going to take one of my scrap pieces of paper. And again, because this is on the fold, I'm going to line that up with the edge, the clean edge of the piece of paper that I'm working on. And then I'm going to continue that same thing up. This one's a lot easier to change than the sleeve. The sleeve is because of the angles and everything, it's a bit harder. So that looks like it's going to fit on my piece of paper. So I'll just put a little glue on there. I love this purple glue. If you're working, for me, this stuff is great. It's so it goes on purple, but once it's dried, it goes completely clear. It works really well for these quick kind of putting togethers of patterns. Sometimes if it's really, if I'm flexing, using the pattern a lot, flexing, etc., I might add an extra piece of tape. But for general purposes, I find this Elmer's glue is just excellent. Anyways, we've put this back on. We've got our extra inch in there. So I'm going to cut that off. This one, as I said, is a lot simpler because you don't need to you don't need to do so much work on the curve. It's quite flat here. So that's quite easy to change. But what we want to do, we're going to measure this one, and then we're going to change the sleeve to make sure that these two. So this is your front to front and the B, and that's the B here to sleeve. So we want to measure this curve and make sure it matches this curve here. And the reason for this, apart from the fact that you just simply are sewing two pieces together and you want them to match up, you also, it's really important that this front area here is also in the sleeve, because this is the whole area that they're moving around in. And if you didn't shorten the sleeve, for some reason you didn't shorten the sleeve, then it would be really tight in the sleeves and it would be really pinching on the dog. So all these areas need to work together to give that extra space for the dog. So let's get the measuring tape out again. And again, you would probably use something a little more accurate than this, but for this purpose, I'm just going to quickly move along. So I'm going to measure from that point there to that point there. And now this is not going to necessarily match up with the back, but you just need to make sure that you get an idea. See, this is actually 8.5, not 7.5. So it does differ. The front is different than the back. If I look at the sleeve component and I measure from that top point there to that point there, let's see what I've got. And I'm just going to eyeball it at this point. If I do that, it's actually pretty close, I think. If I just generally follow the line that's there, no, I lied. It's pretty close. So I'm going to start my point there, my 0 point there, and I'm going to finish my 8.5 at that point, and then just give it a nice little arc to get an idea of how I want these to sew together and create that line. So I think something like that would probably work well. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Again, I'm doing this quickly for the purposes of the camera, but I would use a French curve normally to get this a bit more accurate. But I just wanted to show you with the measuring tape, because if you don't have a French curve, the point being that you can actually just use a measuring tape. And I did measuring tapes for years, and I'm actually quite comfortable with doing it this way. But if you want to be really accurate, you can certainly go ahead and get yourself your French curves if you don't have any, and use those to get your accurate measurement. But if I look at this, I can see that that line pretty much follows the line of the ruler, or the measuring tape, I should say. So now I'm just going to make that line. And then I would make my seam allowance. Oops, I'm getting a little too skinny there. And I just want to make sure that it ends up meeting up with this. Okay, and so last but not least, I will cut that out. Okay, so now, get rid of all the extra scraps and such. We have a sleeve that I've changed the length of the withers on. We've done the same thing by changing the length of the withers and the back. Most importantly, we've changed it on the back, but as I said, changing it on the back you need to change it on the sleeve, and therefore you need to change it on the front. So next week, I'm going to go on to the next customization that's a little bit more challenging. We're going to ramp it up. And this is so the next thing we do is we're going to look at the neck circumference. So I'll just drop this on top again. So if we look at the neck circumference for a dog of this small pattern that I'm working on, it says it's 11. But what if I had a 13-inch neck circumference, or if I had a 9-inch neck circumference? I'm going to show you next week how you're going to go about changing the neck circumference, because you can't do the same thing and just add an extra piece in here. You actually, because if you did that and you didn't want to change the width of all of these parts, you need to actually split this and separate it. You do the same thing. So if I was trying to get to a neck circumference of 13, and let's make it easy for my brain and my math. Let's say the regular measurement is 11, and I want to increase that by a 1/4 inch. Let's say 3/4 of an inch. That'll make it easy for me instead of an inch. So let's say I'm going to make this 11 3/4 instead of 11. Then I would take that extra 3/4 of an inch and I would divide it 3 ways. That's why I was going with the easy math, because I don't want to try to do math on camera. If I did 3/4 of an inch, I would split that 3/4 of an inch equally between these 3 parts. So I would add an extra 1/4 of an inch here, extra 1/4 of an inch here, and an extra 1/4 of an inch here. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's what we're going to talk about next week. Is we're going to talk about how to increase the neck circumference or decrease the neck circumference in order to fit a different size neck than the pattern comes with. So again, this is the fun pattern that we're working on, and we've just taken that withers point and we've made it longer. So we've made a longer withers point from the neck to where the shoulders and the withers points are on the dog. And the same thing we could have done was made this shorter. So that's what we just went over right today. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about how to change the neck circumference on the dog. So we'll go over that, not tomorrow, sorry, next Thursday we're going to go over that. But that's enough for today. I think that was a good session. So I'm just going to flip back to me and just talk about, excuse me. I'm just going to show you a presentation here. Sorry, let's go back to me for a second while I set this up. Okay, so let's flip to the presentation again. All right, so here we go. This is the instruction. So I'm going to put this up. This is just to give you a visual, like an actual written, printed piece that just walks through what I talked about today. So the first thing, as I said, we talked about finding the measurement of the withers on your dog and matching that up to the pattern and seeing what the difference is. Then once you decide what the withers is and how much you're going to change, then you're going to move on to step 2, which is to look at how you're going to split that and whether you're going to shorten it or whether you're going to lengthen it. So the instructions walk you through that. And then the last thing is whatever you did to that back piece, you also need to do the same thing to the front piece. So the instructions walk you through how to do that as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how to go about just changing that withers position on your dog hoodie. And once you understand this concept, you can work with any kind of a pattern. You don't need to work with my pattern. You can work with any pattern you want. And this would actually work for a t-shirt or anything that's doing that same kind of neck, that's covering around the neck, the withers, the arms, all of that area. And so you can adapt this to any kind of a pattern that you're working on. If you have any questions about this, by all means, let me know. You can always add comments in the comment section down below. I'm always happy to answer questions live too. So certainly if you have any questions at all, just add your questions and I will answer them even on camera here if I can. And I hope that that helps you with this situation. If you do have any questions in the future, by all means, add them as a comment below this video and I will respond to those. And I usually remember, if I don't remember, I'll try today for sure to remember I put my email into the description as well, because sometimes you don't want to ask your questions on YouTube. You don't want to have it out to everybody. If you want to just connect with me privately and ask me a question privately, you can just email your questions to me as well. And also, if you are wanting to actually have me look at the pattern that you're working on and respond to a problem that you're having on a particular pattern, send me pictures of it. Give me an idea of what it is that you're dealing with, and then we can go over that live on my YouTube lives, and I can show working with the example that you give me. So I hope that helps you, and I hope that if you have any questions, you will let me know. I will be here again next week, Thursday, at 11 a.m. Pacific, and we will be going over how to adjust the neck circumference on that same hoodie pattern. So I hope you can join me next week as well. And until then, have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions at all, and I would be happy to respond to them. And then in the meantime, we will see you later. Have a good one. Make sure you like this video if you like it. Follow me if you're not already following me, and hit that little bell so that you do get alerted when I go live and when I put up new videos. All right, have a absolutely wonderful week. We will see you next week. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.